First story. I remarried and neglected my son, allowed my stepson to bully my son, and now walked out of my son's wedding to have a dinner with my stepson after my entitled son refused to let my new wife wear a white dress or dance at his wedding. Now my son's wife humiliated my wife, so I demanded my son to make his wife apologize and went NC. Now I'm regretting my actions. I 53M have a son, Jeremy 26M, who just got married to his longtime girlfriend, Tessa 25F. I love my son, and I want to see him happy. But there's a long, messy history behind our relationship that I think might be relevant here. Jeremy's mother passed away when he was 15. It was sudden and painful, and I won't pretend I handled it all perfectly. I was a single dad for about 2 years before I met my current wife, Rachel 52F. We got married after a year of dating, and while I had hoped it would bring stability to our family, the opposite happened. Jeremy never accepted her. She tried to connect early on, but there was resistance from the beginning, and eventually they both just stopped trying. Rachel has a son from a previous marriage, Kyle 24M, who is nothing like Jeremy. Kyle's more sarcastic, blunt, and not exactly diplomatic. A couple years ago, Kyle and Jeremy got into a stupid argument during a family gathering. I don't even remember what started it, something about an old photo album or comparing houses or something petty. But Kyle crossed a serious line. He said something deeply disrespectful about Jeremy's late mother. I shut it down immediately and told him to apologize. But Jeremy stormed out and hasn't spoken to him since. Jeremy made it clear he wanted nothing to do with Kyle after that. And when wedding planning came around, Jeremy told me outright. Kyle wasn't invited, not even as a guest. I tried to talk to him about it once, and he cut the conversation short with, "He disrespected my mum, there's no coming back from that." I didn't push again. Now, about the wedding itself. Jeremy and Tessa planned a big celebration, 150 guests, a high-end venue, and a full reception. It was going to be a full day and evening affair. Personally, I don't like big social events. I get exhausted at them, and I tend to retreat into corners. I told Jeremy early on that I might leave after the ceremony, that I'd be there to support him, but I wasn't sure I'd stay the whole evening. He nodded, didn't argue, and didn't make a big deal out of it. That brings me to Rachel. She was never enthusiastic about going to the wedding, and it wasn't just because of the history. She felt hurt. Jeremy denied her request to wear a white dress, which, okay, I understood his side, they're not appropriate for a guest. But more importantly, he also turned down her request to share a dance with me during the reception. She just wanted a small moment with me. We never had a real wedding when we got married. Just a courthouse. Rachel saw this wedding as a chance to maybe have just a taste of that, a dance, a nice dress, something symbolic. Jeremy said no. He told her it was his day, and he didn't want the focus to shift. He wasn't rude about it, but he was cold. And Rachel, I'll be honest, took it hard. She told me she felt erased, like she wasn't welcome in the family. I tried to talk her into still attending, and the only reason she agreed was because I told her I'd try to bring up the dance again casually at the wedding, when things were more relaxed. I admit that was me kicking the can down the road, hoping something would shift in the moment. So wedding day comes. The ceremony was lovely. Tessa looked beautiful. Jeremy looked nervous but happy. I was genuinely proud of him. I kept things respectful, kept my distance, and didn't try to push Rachel into photos or conversations where it would be awkward. But after the ceremony, while the guests were heading into the reception area, I caught Jeremy privately and brought up the dance again. I said something like, "Hey, I know we talked about this before, but would it be okay if Rachel and I had a short dance at some point? Nothing big, just a moment off to the side." He looked at me and said, "Dad, I already told you this isn't the place for that. Please don't make this about something else." Then he paused and added, "But I'd really like it if you stayed. Just for the dinner and the cake. You don't have to talk to everyone, just stay." So now I'm standing there feeling like I have to choose between my wife and my son. I go back and tell Rachel he said no. She just nodded and said, "Let's go." I hesitated. I told her maybe we could at least sit down for the dinner. She asked if I was going to let her just sit there humiliated, pretending to smile, while everyone celebrated her rejection. She wasn't yelling or anything, just hurt, calm, done. I gave in. I said, "Let's just head out. We can grab dinner on the way home." She agreed. She asked if Kyle wanted to meet us, and I said sure. So we left quietly, without telling anyone. I texted Jeremy saying we had to head out early, and that we'd talk later. I also mentioned that the food didn't look all that appetizing, and that we'd just eat on the way home. I didn't bring up the dance again in the message. I didn't want to argue. We met Kyle at a nearby restaurant, had dinner, and tried to move on with the evening. Rachel seemed in better spirits. I was feeling a little guilty, but I figured I'd talk to Jeremy the next day and explain. I never got the chance. The next morning, Tessa started blowing up both my phone and Rachel's. Dozens of messages and voice notes, all saying variations of the same thing, that we were disgusting, selfish, and disrespectful. That we'd ruined the night. That Jeremy was gutted and barely smiled during the whole reception. And that going out to dinner with Kyle was a slap in the face. She called Rachel a bitter second wife who can't stand not being the center of attention. She said I was spineless for letting her control me and called our marriage an embarrassment. She even made a snide remark about our courthouse wedding, saying, "Maybe if you two had had a real wedding, you wouldn't have tried to hijack ours." I was stunned. I texted her to stop. I told her this was way out of line, and she had no right to talk to me or my wife like that. Then I called Jeremy to talk it through and tell him what was happening. When Jeremy picked up, I told him straight away that Tessa had been sending some pretty awful messages to me and Rachel. I didn't read them word for word, but I said enough that he knew the tone. I expected him to be surprised, or at least ask what she said. Instead, he cut in almost immediately and said, "Dad, I don't want to hear it." I tried again. I said I wasn't calling to fight, just to let him know what was being said, and to explain why we left. I barely got that far before he snapped back that I always do this, that I always make things about Rachel, and that I never listen to him when he says no. He said I'd promised him I wouldn't push for the dance again, and then did it anyway. I reminded him that he knew this was important to Rachel, that she wasn't asking to take over the night, just to have one small moment with me. He said, "That's not your call. This was about my mum and my marriage." That's when the conversation stopped being calm. Jeremy said he watched his father walk out of his wedding reception, not because of logistics or discomfort, but because he didn't get his way. He said people noticed. His aunt asked where I went. A couple of his friends asked if something was wrong. He said he spent the rest of the night trying to pretend things were fine while replaying that in his head. I told him he knew from the beginning that I might leave early. He shot back that leaving early and leaving immediately after being told no were two very different things. According to him, the timing mattered more than I seemed willing to admit. He also brought up Kyle. He said going to dinner with Kyle, specifically, was a deliberate choice. He said I had to know how that would look. I told him Kyle wasn't invited to the wedding, so it's not like we ditched Jeremy to go sit with Kyle at the venue. Jeremy said that didn't matter. At that point, he said he didn't want to talk anymore, and that he needed space. Then he hung up. After that call, I felt like I was standing in the middle of something that had been brewing for years and had finally boiled over. Rachel was furious about the messages from Tessa. She said if that's how they were going to treat her, she wanted nothing to do with them. She also said she was tired of being treated like a guest in her own family, like she had to apologize just for existing. I didn't disagree with her, but I also knew pushing back harder would only widen the gap with my son. Jeremy has always drawn a sharp line between his life before his mother died and everything that came after. Birthdays, holidays, even casual dinners, there's always an undercurrent of distance. He rarely comes to our house. When he does, he speaks to Rachel politely, but nothing more. If Kyle is there, Jeremy stays for as short a time as possible. After the argument years ago, he told me he didn't trust Kyle and didn't want to be around him. I respected that. But it also meant our family gatherings shrank and became awkward affairs where everyone was aware of who was missing and why. Rachel has always felt judged by that. She believes Jeremy blames her for moving on too quickly after his mother's death. She believes he sees her as a replacement, even though she never tried to be one. Over the years, she's told me she feels like she's constantly paying for something she didn't do. The wedding just brought all of that to the surface. At the same time, I understand why Jeremy didn't want certain things at his wedding. His mother isn't there to have a dance with him. That loss doesn't go away just because time passes. I get why seeing Rachel in white or watching her dance with me might feel wrong to him. What I struggle with is being told I was selfish for wanting to support my wife when she felt publicly rejected, especially after I was encouraged to stay, and then effectively told that what mattered to her didn't. Since the wedding, things have been quiet. Jeremy hasn't reached out. Tessa stopped messaging after I told her to stop, but she never apologized. Rachel says she's done trying. She says if they want her to be present only when it's convenient and invisible the rest of the time, she's not interested. Kyle found out what happened through us and is angry on our behalf. He says Jeremy has never forgiven him and never planned to, and that the wedding drama just proved it. I'm stuck in the middle. I keep replaying the moment after the ceremony when Jeremy asked me to stay. Maybe I should have stayed, even if Rachel was upset. Maybe I should have told her we'd leave later. Maybe walking out right then sent a message I didn't fully think through. On the other hand, I can't ignore that I had already explained my limits, that I was upfront about not wanting to stay long, and that the decision to leave wasn't made lightly or loudly. We didn't cause a scene. We didn't make an announcement. We just left. What makes this harder is that now the narrative seems set. From Jeremy and Tessa's side, we walked out to prove a point, and then went to celebrate with someone Jeremy can't forgive. From my side, I supported my wife after she was told once again that she doesn't belong, and I chose to leave a place where I felt unwelcome. So I'm asking honestly, was I wrong for leaving the wedding when I did? Should I have stayed despite everything to avoid hurting my son? Am I the arsehole here? Or is this the result of years of unresolved anger finally colliding? Comments. Comment 1. You want to know what makes you top? The fact that you used your wife's feelings as a get-out-of-staying-free card. She was upset she couldn't have a dance at someone else's wedding, and you let that override your son's once-in-a-lifetime moment. You couldn't fake it for an hour. 1 hour. You didn't even wait for speeches or the cake. And going to dinner with Kyle. You might as well have texted Jeremy a middle finger emoji. The guy insulted Jeremy's late mother, and your response was, well, he's not banned from restaurants. Seriously. It's wild how you're sitting here confused about why your son is done with you. He's been trying to tell you for years. This was just the final straw. Comment 2. There are a lot of people dunking on Rachel here. But honestly, Jeremy and his wife need to grow the hell up. You told him ahead of time you might leave early. He gave a vague, okay. Then after the ceremony, he says he wants you to stay, but still refuses a harmless request from your wife. I'm not saying she had any right to expect a big moment at someone else's wedding, no way. But what was the harm in you and her having one quiet dance in the corner, if it meant she didn't feel completely erased? Jeremy sounds like he's got this scorecard in his head of who's loyal to his mom and who isn't. Rachel will always be on the wrong side of that. No winning that fight. And Tessa coming in swinging with the insults just shows how toxic the energy is over there. The Kyle thing? Yeah, maybe not the smoothest move, but the guy wasn't even allowed at the wedding. Were you supposed to make him sit home like he's grounded? Bottom line. They want you to play the perfect dad in a setup where your wife is treated like an intruder. F that. Comment 3. YTA. You didn't even try. You say you hate social gatherings, okay, fair. But this wasn't a random party. It was your son's wedding. You left before the meal like it was a work function you were obligated to clock in for and ditch. That, the food didn't look appetizing line, cold. That's not something you say when someone's been planning and paying for months. Also stop acting like Rachel's request was normal. Who the hell asks to stage a symbolic first dance at someone else's wedding reception? And why are you backing her instead of being the buffer she clearly needed? If she's so sensitive to rejection, maybe don't put her in a situation where she's looking for validation from the one person least likely to give it. Your son didn't lose his cool because you left. He lost it because this is a pattern, and you just proved again that you'll leave the second it stops being about you. Comment 4. This isn't about weddings or dances or food. This is 10+ years of resentment finally blowing open. Jeremy sees Rachel as a symbol of everything that changed after his mum died, the fast remarriage, the blended family he never wanted, and the replacement that felt forced. He never processed any of it, and clearly neither did you. You say you shut it down when Kyle insulted his mum, but that's a massive moment for Jeremy. That was his last straw. You never rebuilt from it. And Rachel? I don't blame her for having feelings, but it takes a hell of a lot of entitlement to make your stepkid's wedding about what you didn't get at your wedding. There's no world where a symbolic dance at his reception doesn't turn into a spotlight moment. She felt rejected, maybe. But Jeremy's been quietly swallowing this whole thing for a decade, and finally got one day to do things on his terms. You and Rachel made sure he knew you were still waiting for your moment, too. Leaving wasn't neutral. It was a protest. And he heard it loud and clear. Update. It's been over a year since the wedding. I thought things would cool down after a while, but somehow everything's gotten more fractured. Since a few people asked for an update, and I could use some advice, here's how it all played out. The blow-up started the day after the wedding when my daughter-in-law Tessa sent those aggressive messages to me and Rachel. I did call Jeremy and tried to talk, but that conversation went sideways fast. He cut it short, told me I always pull this kind of thing, and said he needed space. Fair enough, I figured. I thought with time, things would ease up. They didn't. Rachel was furious for weeks. She felt completely humiliated, and she said Tessa's messages were trash talk. I was still trying to give Jeremy the benefit of the doubt, but Rachel wasn't having it. About a month after the wedding, she posted a long rant on Facebook, nothing by name. But it was obvious who it was about. She called out people who shame stepmothers for existing, and people who pretend grief gives them permission to treat others like crap, and said how hurtful it was to be excluded from a celebration that should have been about family. The post got traction. Her friends commented things like, You deserve better. And people are so ungrateful. A few of her family members also jumped in. One of her cousins replied, "You were way too graceful, honestly." No one from Jeremy's side responded publicly, but word got back to them. Tessa messaged Rachel directly, furious. She didn't mince words. She told her she was milking a situation she created and playing victim after bailing on someone else's wedding. She demanded Rachel take the post down and apologize. Rachel flat out refused. She said the only apology owed was from Tessa, for how she spoke to us after the wedding. That was the last direct communication we had with them for months. A long silence followed, which I thought would give everyone room to cool off. But Rachel stayed stuck on it. I'd hear her on the phone talking about the wedding disaster like it just happened last week. Sometimes to her sister, sometimes to one of her friends from work. Same lines over and over. All I wanted was one dance, or you'd think I tried to hijack the entire wedding. I let it go at first, but I started noticing it became the centerpiece of every family story she told. Around that same time, Rachel and I went to another wedding one of her friend's sons, and the DJ invited couples to the floor for a slow dance. Rachel turned to me and said, "See? No one here is crying about who's dancing with whom." Later, she posted a photo of us dancing with the caption, "Grateful for spaces where people actually value kindness and inclusion." Again, no names. But it didn't take a genius to figure out what it was referencing. Her side of the family started pulling away from Jeremy entirely. One of her nieces used to follow Jeremy on social media. She unfollowed him after that post. I started hearing little comments like, "Well, Kyle's always been more respectful," or, "At least you have one son who shows up." I didn't realize how deep Rachel's bitterness had gotten until a holiday dinner with Kyle. It was his birthday, and Rachel wanted to make it special. We posted a photo of the dinner and captioned it, "Celebrating the one who's always had our back." It got some likes from extended family. No one said anything negative, but I noticed Jeremy unfollowed both of us after that. Tessa blocked us completely. I probably should have seen that coming. Later that year, I found out through my sister that Tessa was pregnant. She told me in passing almost cautiously. I felt a wave of something I hadn't felt in years, regret. Not anger, not defensiveness. Just this sinking feeling that I was completely on the outside of something that should have been one of the most important moments in my life. That was the first time I thought, maybe I screwed this up worse than I thought. Still, I didn't reach out directly. I didn't think I'd be welcome. So I asked my nephew Jeremy's cousin, who's always been close with him, to try talking to him. I told him I wasn't expecting miracles, just that I wanted to be in the loop about the baby, and maybe find a way to start fixing things. He agreed to feel it out. A few days later, he called back and said Jeremy told him he wants to talk now that there's a baby. No thanks. That hurt. I won't lie. Then there was the baby shower. Tessa's family hosted it at her parents' house. It wasn't supposed to be public knowledge, but Rachel saw a post about it through someone she used to work with. I told her to leave it alone, but she said maybe if we just showed up, Jeremy would see we cared. It didn't go well. We brought a gift. We weren't loud. We didn't show up with Kyle. But the second we walked into the yard, Tessa's mum spotted us and said, "No, not today." Jeremy came out and said, "You don't get to drop in now. You made your choice." We left. Rachel cried on the way home. I didn't say much. Since then, the silence has gotten heavier. We spent the holidays with Kyle and his girlfriend. Rachel posted the usual family pictures, but this time she didn't tag anyone. Then, a few weeks ago, I walked past the office while Rachel was on a video call with a friend. I wasn't listening at first, but I heard her say, "You know, I'm still angry about that damn wedding. I wish I'd just walked out during the ceremony." Her friend laughed. Rachel went on about how disrespectful Jeremy had been and how she'd never forgive Tessa for making herself the gatekeeper of grief. And that's when it hit me. She's still in it. I thought we were both ready to move on. I thought time would heal this. But Rachel hasn't let it go. And maybe I haven't either. Maybe I've been enabling all of this by just going along with her bitterness, instead of taking a real look at what we did and what we left behind. I think Jeremy meant it when he said he didn't want us around his kid. And I don't know how to undo that. I've spent years blaming other people for the tension. Tessa, Kyle, even Jeremy's grief. But I keep replaying the image of him at his own wedding looking around the reception and realizing neither parent stayed. So here I am. Rachel still won't apologize. She still thinks she was wronged. I'm starting to wonder if she'll ever see her part in this. And I know that if I keep siding with her just to keep peace at home, I'm going to lose any chance of reconnecting with my son. I haven't reached out again yet. I don't want to mess this up worse. But I'm tired of pretending that all of this is just someone else's fault. I want to be in my son's life again, not just to hold a grandchild or be in a holiday photo. but to actually be part of it. If you've been through anything like this, how do you even start to fix something this broken? Do I write a letter? Show up again? Back off completely? Is it even possible to come back from this? I'll take any advice. Just don't tell me to give it time. We've had time. And it only made the silence louder. Comments. Comment 1. You let your wife turn a grudge into a campaign and watched her burn every bridge while standing next to her holding the matches. This isn't just about the wedding anymore. This is about how you co-signed her pain and pettiness and let it define your entire relationship with your kid. At every fork in the road, you went with her, even when the direction was straight into a wall. The Facebook posts, you let them happen. The dinner with Kyle, you participated. Showing up to that shower uninvited. That's the kind of move people talk about for years. Rachel made her stance clear from day one. She wasn't interested in being a stepmom. She wanted to be the only mom figure left. Jeremy didn't give her that, and she never forgave him. She's been keeping score ever since. And you let her. That's the part that sucks to read. You say she's not ready to reconcile. But are you? Because unless you're ready to sit down on your own, own what you did, and stop trying to explain it, Jeremy's going to keep you exactly where you are out of reach. Comment 2. You don't have a son problem. You've got a spine problem. Rachel's still fighting a war that ended the moment your kid said no to a dance, and you let her drag you back into every skirmish since. She posts passive-aggressive SHT online, throws shade about a dead woman, and badmouths your son to anyone who'll listen. And your idea of damage control is dinner with Kyle. And then you act confused when Jeremy shuts the door in your face? That shower stunt alone would have been enough for permanent no contact if I were in his shoes. You weren't invited. You knew you weren't welcome. You came anyway. It doesn't matter how quiet you were. You disrespected the space because you thought the gesture was bigger than the history. It wasn't. You want advice. Drop the nostalgia act. Stop acting like you're owed a relationship because time passed. Relationships don't auto-repair. You've got years of one-sided loyalty to your wife to account for. Until you're ready to stand up to her, don't expect anyone else to stand next to you. Comment 3. Do you ever just stop and ask yourself why Rachel needs to be in the center of every goddamn moment? Someone else's wedding, she wanted a symbolic dance. Someone else's kid, she needed to be the grieving stepmom. She didn't get those things, and instead of handling disappointment like a grown adult, she threw an emotional parade that's been going on for a year. And you became her hype man. Whether it was guilt, comfort, or fear of rocking the boat, I don't know. But you got in the passenger seat and watched her steer right into your son's life and out the other side. That line Jeremy gave you, you don't get to drop in now. You made your choice. That's not spite. That's a boundary set by someone who's been burned too many times to pretend anymore. The apology isn't just overdue. It has to come from a place you've never shown him self-awareness without qualifiers. Not, we both made mistakes. Not, we didn't mean harm. It has to be, I let her push you out, and I didn't stop her. Anything less is more noise. Update. It's been several months since my last post, and a lot has happened. I'm writing this partly to get it out of my head, and partly because I don't actually know what the right next step is anymore, or if there even is one. After finding out about the pregnancy, I made what I thought was a reasonable attempt to extend an olive branch. I sent Jeremy a check with a note saying it was for the baby, not labeled for anything specific, just help. I didn't ask for anything in return. I didn't attach conditions. I figured even if he didn't want to talk to me, he might accept something practical. The check came back in the mail a week later, untouched. No note. Nothing. That stung more than I expected. Rachel said it proved he was trying to punish us. I told myself he was just overwhelmed. Then the birth happened. We didn't hear it directly. I found out from a coworker of Rachel's who is loosely connected to Tessa's family. I drove to the hospital parking lot without really thinking it through. I didn't go inside. I didn't announce myself. I just sat there, thinking maybe if they changed their mind, I'd be close by. They didn't. Later that night, Jeremy texted me one line. Please stop. That was it. Rachel was furious when she found out he'd contacted me. She said I was letting him dictate the terms again, and that I was allowing myself to be pushed around. A few days later, she wrote another post online, this time about becoming a grandparent and being shut out without explanation. She never used names, but people understood. Someone sent a screenshot to Tessa. I know because Tessa messaged me directly for the first time since the wedding, telling me to get my wife to stop talking about their child publicly. She said if it didn't stop, they'd take steps to make sure we stayed completely out of their lives. Rachel read that message and laughed. She said, so now they're threatening us. Things spiraled from there. Rachel sent a baby gift anyway, a blanket with the baby's name embroidered and a card signed Grandma Rachel. A few weeks later, The package was returned unopened. Inside was the card, folded once, with no extra note. That broke her. She cried for days, then turned it into anger. She said they were teaching the baby to reject her before it could even speak. I tried reaching out again, this time through my nephew Jeremy's cousin, the same one who'd spoken to him before. I asked him to explain that I wasn't trying to overstep, that I just wanted some connection. He called me back later and said Jeremy was done discussing it, and that involving other people was making things worse. He sounded exhausted, and I got the sense he didn't want to be in the middle anymore. He hasn't returned my calls since. After that, Rachel started talking openly about legal options. Not in a concrete way, more in the sense of, I want to know what our rights are. I didn't pursue it, but I didn't shut it down either. I mentioned it in passing to my sister during a phone call. 2 weeks later, I received a formal letter asking me to stop contacting Jeremy and his family. That letter made everything feel final in a way nothing else had. Around that same time, something else happened that made me realize how detached we'd become. A family member posted a picture of the baby online. Rachel and I were looking at it together, and neither of us could remember the baby's name right away. We guessed wrong. I tried to laugh it off, but Rachel blamed Jeremy, saying that if he'd let us be involved from the start, it wouldn't feel so distant. I agreed out loud, though something about that moment stayed with me. Forgetting your grandchild's name is not someone else's fault. Rachel has since decided she's done trying. She says she's crossed her limit, that she tried harder than she ever should have, and that it's time to focus on people who actually care. Her son, Kyle, is getting married next spring. Rachel is fully invested in that wedding. Planning, venues, guest lists, all of it. She's thrown herself into it with a kind of energy I haven't seen in years. Last week, she gave me an ultimatum. She said she's not willing to keep being emotionally split between her son and a stepson who wants nothing to do with her. She said she expects my support, and that if I keep clinging to Jeremy, it will poison what we have left. She wants us to step back entirely and let them live their lives without us hovering in the background. I agreed, at least on the surface. I even posted something vague online about choosing peace and letting go of people who refuse reconciliation. Rachel liked it immediately. But here's the part I haven't said out loud. I'm not sure I trust this new sense of unity with Kyle either. Rachel brushes off their past issues as teenage behavior, but I remember things differently. Kyle had a temper when he was younger. There were moments where I genuinely felt like I had to step in physically to keep him from hurting someone during arguments. He never directed it at me directly, but there was an incident when he was 17 where he almost did. I tried to keep him in line back then, and he resented me for it. That resentment never fully went away. Now he's polite, sure. He includes me in group chats about the wedding, but there's a distance there that feels performative. I don't think he dislikes me. I also don't think he cares that much. I'm a placeholder father figure when it's convenient. Rachel dismisses all of this. She says I'm overthinking it, that Kyle appreciates me more than he knows how to say, and that this is my chance to finally have the family life I wanted without constant resistance. I want to believe her. I also can't shake the feeling that I'm slowly removing myself from one life without truly being anchored in another. I've stopped reaching out to Jeremy. I followed through on stepping down, like Rachel asked. On the outside, things look calmer. No more fights. No more returned packages. No more warnings from lawyers. Inside, it feels hollow. I don't know if Jeremy will ever want to speak to me again. I don't know if choosing my wife fully, the way she wants, will actually lead to anything more stable. I also know that every step along the way, I made choices that prioritized keeping the peace at home over addressing the damage honestly. I'm not asking how to force my way back into my son's life. I know that door is closed for now. I'm asking whether stepping away completely is the right call, or whether I've already gone too far down a path that leaves me isolated from both sides. I told myself I was trying to be fair to everyone. Looking back, I mostly avoided conflict in the moment and paid for it later. If anyone has been in a position where every option costs you a relationship, I'd like to know what you did when the dust finally settled. I'm still here. I'm still thinking about it. I just don't know who I'm supposed to be choosing anymore. Comments. Comment 1. There's a huge difference between stepping back out of respect and stepping down because someone gave you an ultimatum. You didn't choose peace. You chose the path that caused the least waves at home, and Rachel's been steering that ship since day one. She picked every fight, and you turned every one of them into a misunderstanding until Jeremy shut the whole thing down. The kicker is you still don't trust the stepson you're now backing publicly. You remember him almost hitting you as a teen, but you're willing to bank your future on his marriage now. That tells me you're just tired, not invested. You never built a bridge to either son. You just watched who was yelling loudest and moved in that direction. Eventually, They both noticed. Comment 2. You tried to play neutral while backing one side the entire time. You say you stopped reaching out to Jeremy, but not because it was healthy, you did it because Rachel told you to. And now you're acting like this is some tragic moral crossroads when really, it's a long arse chain of passive decisions. You let your wife weaponize grief and family titles for over a year. You didn't forget your grandkid's name because of a lack of bond. You forgot because you and Rachel spent more time posting cryptic Facebook SHT and throwing tantrums about respect than actually listening. You're right about one thing though, Kyle doesn't seem to give much of a damn either. Can't say I blame him. Sounds like the only time anyone in your house gets attention is when there's a grudge involved. Comment 3. You don't get to act confused when your kid locks you out after you stood by someone who made his mother's death a competition. Rachel wanted a role that was never offered. And instead of helping her adjust expectations, you kept trying to force a square peg into a locked door. Every gesture you've made has had an edge. Here's money for the baby. We were in the parking lot just in case. We forgot the name because we weren't allowed in. None of it's clean. Every move drips with guilt tripping or performance. It's all noise when the one thing Jeremy probably wanted was for you to stand up once and say, I get it. I see why you're hurt. And now you're backing Kyle, a guy you admit has no warmth for you. So what exactly are you choosing here? You're chasing scraps and calling it family. Update. This update is something I never expected to write. The short version is everything fell apart, not just between me and my son, but in my entire household. The family I thought I had is gone. The relationship I thought I was protecting ended up collapsing anyway, and I've been left sitting in the ruins, trying to understand what's even salvageable. After I stepped back from reaching out to Jeremy like Rachel wanted, I focused on trying to do things right with Kyle's wedding. I thought maybe it could be a second chance of sorts. Rachel was thrilled. She took over half the planning. I didn't fight it. I helped where I could, offered to pay for the rehearsal dinner, and told Kyle whatever he needed, I was there. Rachel asked me to make sure Jeremy didn't show up uninvited. I said that wouldn't happen. Jeremy hadn't spoken to me in almost a year by that point. But Rachel still insisted we exclude him formally. Kyle didn't even flinch. He said he was keeping the list small, just people who actually show up. That hit harder than I let on. During the lead-up, Rachel got more and more intense. Every time she'd see a photo of Jeremy's baby online, she'd change the subject or roll her eyes. Once, when a family friend mentioned the baby was walking already, Rachel muttered something like, I guess he learned how to run away early. I knew things were shifting, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. After Kyle's wedding, Rachel sent a message to Jeremy with pictures from the event, nothing aggressive, just photos and a note that said, This is what family support looks like. I didn't know she sent it until Jeremy blocked both of us permanently. Rachel acted like she didn't care, but I could tell it hit a nerve. Then she started talking about grandkids again. Not Jeremy's. She wanted Kyle and his new wife, Danny, to have one immediately. She dropped hints at dinner and made pointed comments when Danny didn't drink wine. Danny laughed it off at first, but it got worse. Rachel started cornering her with suggestions and fertility books, and even brought up baby names one night like it was already settled. I pulled Rachel aside and said she needed to slow down. She said, You already lost one grandchild. I'm not losing another. Then the bomb dropped. A few months after the wedding, it came out that Kyle had been cheating on Danny before and during their engagement. Danny found messages, photos, and even an old burner account. She confronted him. He denied it, and then blamed her for not paying enough attention. The marriage started unraveling fast. Rachel refused to believe it at first. When it became undeniable, she snapped, but not at Kyle. She started blaming Danny, saying she should have kept her man in check and let go of the past like she had with me. Kyle moved out temporarily. Rachel began pushing him to reconcile. She said she'd help bring them back together. And she took that literally. One night, she showed up at Danny's apartment uninvited. I wasn't there. Danny said Rachel came in ranting, accusing her of poisoning Kyle's mind and ruining everything. Danny told her to leave. Rachel wouldn't. They argued. At some point, Rachel grabbed her arm and shoved her into the doorframe. Danny pressed charges the next day. Rachel was arrested. I found out while at work. Kyle called me and said I needed to come get her from holding. When I arrived, Rachel wasn't remorseful. She said she lost it for a second, but that Danny exaggerated everything. She didn't even ask how Danny was. She only asked if the baby talk was off the table now. Kyle refused to speak to her after that. He's still dealing with the fallout. He told me he doesn't want her anywhere near him. He also blamed her for how bad things got said. Her pressure to have a perfect marriage made him double down on lies he might have confessed otherwise. Now we're here. Rachel's still in custody. Bail was set. But she hasn't been released yet, her attorneys advising against it until they get a clearer picture of Danny's testimony. Meanwhile, I've been sitting in a half-empty house trying to piece through the wreckage. I've heard nothing from Jeremy, but I've seen pictures. He looks happy. Tessa too. The baby's growing. They're living their life without us. I don't blame them. For the first time since the wedding, I'm realizing how far I bent myself trying to maintain a relationship that was always on uneven ground. I thought choosing Rachel meant keeping things stable. I thought staying quiet when she went too far was the cost of peace. I didn't notice how much resentment I was swallowing until there was nothing left to protect. The last time Rachel and I spoke before her court appearance, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "You were never on my side enough. That's why everyone leaves." That stuck with me. Not because I agreed, but because it felt like the final word. I haven't reached out to Kyle. He hasn't reached out to me. I don't think he will. He's trying to rebuild whatever's left of his life. I'm just another thing he doesn't want to deal with right now. And Jeremy, I have no illusions. I'm not expecting a text. I'm not pretending time will fix this. I missed too many moments. I let too much happen in the name of keeping Rachel from feeling rejected. Somewhere in the middle of trying to keep two people happy, I lost both. I've thought about writing one last message to Jeremy. Not to force anything. Just to say I'm still here, and that I understand more now than I did. I haven't sent it. I don't know if I will. I wanted this update to be an explanation, but reading it over, it feels more like a confession. I don't need forgiveness, I've run out of people to ask for it. All I can say now is I see the pieces, and I know I held the hammer. Comments. Comment 1. You want sympathy now that it's all ashes, but for what exactly? You ignored every red flag, every escalation, every sick little hint that Rachel was only interested in family if it orbited her. She harassed your pregnant daughter-in-law, assaulted your other son's wife, and still somehow managed to make it all about how she felt betrayed. And you let her. What's wild is that even now, after everything, your update is more about how you feel abandoned than what you allowed to happen under your roof. You didn't lose people, you pushed them. You built a whole support system around someone who made her own trauma the blueprint for how others should suffer, then acted shocked when everyone bailed. Jeremy made peace by staying away. Kyle's trying to crawl out of his own mess. One Rachel helped him dig. And you're still sitting there talking about what could have been like it wasn't all laid out in front of you from the start. This isn't tragedy. It's a consequence. Comment 2. You talk about Rachel like she's this storm that came through your life, and you were just clinging to a tree, hoping not to get blown over. That's bullshit. You weren't clinging, you were handing her the damn umbrella. You didn't stand up to her when she humiliated Jeremy at his own wedding. You didn't push back when she demanded a baby from someone else's marriage, like it was a effing Amazon wishlist. And when she laid hands on Danny, you still minimized it as a bad moment. Your silence bought her every inch of damage she caused. Even Kyle, for all his mess, saw through her eventually. You didn't. And you're still hoping Jeremy will reach out. For what? So you can do to his family what you did to his brothers. Here's the truth. You weren't a victim of Rachel. You were her backup singer. You harmonized every bad decision she made, even when it meant losing your kids. And now you're shocked the show's over and no one clapped. Second story. My husband is a very loving, but short-tempered guy who has recently become abusive. But I love him and think his rage is because of my fault. Should I divorce him? I 24F have been with my partner 29M for almost 5 years now. We bought our first home and spent months renovating it. And we moved in together 12 months ago. When we first met, we had running in common. That's how we met. But about 2 years ago, I got an injury in my foot that is a permanent one and means I can no longer run. We no longer have a thing in common or to do together. We go for walks together and dinners out, etc. But not for a hobby or activity that we can enjoy as a couple. That's honestly not a major thing for me. I enjoy the things we do together. I'm a fairly independent person and keep myself busy in many other ways with my work, horse, and the gym. But he has found it a little harder, as he lives a quieter life and wishes we had more time together. But here is the real reason I'm questioning everything. 99% of the time he is a gentle, calm, funny, caring, sweet person who would do anything for me. But that 1% of the time, he has pretty bad anger issues, and his behavior has been getting worse. I made it clear in the beginning that if we had any issues with each other, we needed to talk it out so we could work through the problem and not build up resentment, and he agreed. But that hasn't been happening. Things will be going well as far as I understand. Then one day out of the blue, he blows up. On 4 occasions, this year alone, things around the house have been broken. Dents in the new kitchen bench. He slammed the front door, and it split up the middle and the handle came off. He broke a drawer in the dishwasher from slamming it. And in his latest incident on Christmas Eve, he threw knives at the wall. Each time I wasn't home, I would get a phone call where he would scream, swear at me and demand I come home so we could talk about why he was feeling so angry. I would come home, and he would scream, verbally abuse me some more, and tell me about the damage he's done. This latest incident has rocked me. Knives at the wall. WTF. I told him this is so far from okay. And he gets defensive and says things along the lines of I didn't do it while I was angry. And it's not like I threw it at a person. That sent chills down my spine. He has thrown pillows at me once and pushed me once as well. I'm not physically scared of him. I am stronger and fitter than he is. But that is so not the point for me. And honestly, I don't even disagree with what the issues were that made him angry in the first place. But this could have been discussed in a calm, mature manner. Not by screaming, swearing at me, and breaking stuff. There have been many incidents this year that I won't go into, as it will take too long. But he has an inability to handle minor stresses, which makes me seriously question whether there is a future with him. Imagine if we had a kid. I know for a fact he wouldn't cope, especially with zero sleep. But again, 99% of the time he is wonderful, and would do anything for me. I know he loves me. Are these blow-ups something we can work through? Or is this a sign of escalation? Something I need to run from now? Comments. Commenter 1. Is this new behavior? If he has never exhibited anger like this, he probably ought to see his doctor. It may be he has developed a mental health problem, or, heaven forbid, a brain tumor. If he has always had a temper, but it has been escalating since your injury, then you should leave. Throwing knives is not ever acceptable. That's a dangerous level of anger. You need to leave immediately. OP. I have seen him have a blow-up with his sister and mother before we moved in together. He and his sister did start throwing hands in the argument I saw. He had a bruise on his arm. He has had MH troubles in the past. He has been on meds for the last couple of years. He tried to come off them at the start of the year, but I demanded he go back on them, as his moods became very unstable. Commenter 2. Has he always had occasional outbursts like this? Is this behavior new for him, or is it just becoming more frequent? Has he been evaluated by a doctor to see if anything medical is causing his outbursts of anger? If the destructive episodes are not new, and have been going on to some degree for the 5 years you've been together, you should take the escalation as a sign that it's time to leave. OP. I have seen him have a blow-up with his sister and mother before we moved in together. He and his sister did start throwing hands in the argument I saw. He had a bruise on his arm. He has had MH troubles in the past. He has been on meds for the last couple of years. He tried to come off them at the start of the year, but I demanded he go back on them, as his moods became very unstable. Additional information from OP in comments. OP. These incidents aren't super regular, like every few months, which makes it not a clear-cut decision for me. My parents are incredible, and are now aware of what's happened over the last 12 months. I do plan on speaking to his parents as well. Out of respect for them, I think they should know how their son has been behaving. If we do break up, it's going to destroy him. They will need to be involved in the field so nothing happens. But again, I'm really struggling with the decision. The part that's hard is the reasons he's angry are my fault. Albeit, I didn't realize they were an issue for him, as he would always say it was fine, or he didn't mind. But I probably haven't been treating him well. I'm no angel in this. Things like leaving a mess around the house, running late everywhere, and not spending much time with him as I get caught up in my own day-to-day. And then I'm exhausted when I get home. He has been spotting me, and taking more of a financial load since I tried to start my own business. He fully supported this as I stepped away from my full-time job. But it hasn't taken off. All things considered, when you lay it out, I completely understand why this would be frustrating. I should step up more as a partner. The problem is how he says things are fine day to day, and then has a big blow up, and the fact they are getting increasingly worse. I wonder if a little more context helps you guys understand why I'm finding it hard to know what to do. It's not a black and white situation. I've hurt him, and this is how it comes out. Update. Well, it's certainly been a week. First off, I want to thank everyone who's commented on my post. Nearly everyone said I needed to end things, and end things I did. It's been a long and stressful 1-2 weeks, but I'm feeling 10x lighter now. I didn't realize how bad things were, but when everything was all written out in the post, and with everyone saying his behavior is so far from normal, it made me realize there really wasn't a question anymore about trying to save the relationship. My gut was right. I cannot stay with him. Based on the circumstances, and the fact we live within 10 mins of both our families, and some other reasons, just disappearing from the house wasn't really an option. I spoke to his parents, as I was going to need their help on the day of the breakup to keep myself safe, to make sure he leaves, and that he doesn't do anything stupid to himself. He doesn't have MH issues, editor's note. Mental health, but has threatened to unalive himself more than once when he was angry, not getting his way, etc. His parents were horrified when I told them what had been happening over the last 12 months and took me at my word. They said they would help me any way they could and have him move back home with them so they can get him the help he desperately needs. The hardest part about it was his parents were heading away for a week interstate, which meant I was in the horrible limbo of knowing the relationship was over and wanting nothing to do with him, but needing to keep things appearing normal as to not trigger another rage-filled blow-up. The last thing I needed was to have him catching on to my plans. I know some will say I should have just left and not waited for his parents to come home or just stayed somewhere else until they did. But it honestly didn't feel like an option in this circumstance. I also didn't feel to be in any danger, as we were in that honeymoon phase after his blow-up where he acts like nothing ever happened and is super kind to me. Probably trying to make up for it, and maybe part of the reason I've stayed in this situation as long as I have. The day of the break went as well as it could. I had spent the morning out with one of my oldest friends and had been talking to both my and his parents, so we could all be there at the same time to get him out of the house. My friend left, and honestly, things went as well as they could have. It was still a breakup, so it felt awful, but he didn't try anything because of the support around me. His parents took him home, and all his belongings went with him. I am still in the house, but have changed the locks and added extra security measures so I feel safe. He has stayed away, and I have had no contact from him. Now I'm contacting family lawyers so we can begin the process of dividing assets and dealing with the house. Thank you again for everyone's support with this. It's seriously appreciated. I feel so much better and ready to move on with my life, away from him. Comments. Commenter 1. Proud of you, OP. That sounds like it took so much strength to plan all that out and follow through. Having his parents on your side was clutch. Honestly, it probably saved you from a way messier situation. Hope the lawyer stuff goes smoothly and you can finally breathe easy. Commenter 2. And with respect to your lawyer, discuss the plausibility of a restraining order. I anticipate he'll become totally unhinged when he becomes aware it's over. Commenter 3. It feels so rare to see a story where parents acknowledge that their child is abusive and step in to help correct things. I'm glad things went as smoothly as they did for you. Best of luck with your next chapter. Commenter 4. You didn't just leave him. You logistically dismantled the relationship like a pro, and I am in awe. Like, girl, you handled that breakup with the precision of a military operation. Proud doesn't even cover it. OP, thank you so much. This comment honestly warmed my heart. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.